Thank you very much. And a big hello, a g'day, I guess we should say, from Australia. We have just got off the plane after a 14-hour ride this morning, and our plane was 3 hours delayed this morning out of Melbourne. So we got on a plane at 3 a.m. this morning from Melbourne and have just arrived. But we're feeling great. We've had a little bit too much coffee, perhaps, just to compensate. But it is such an exciting opportunity for us to be here. We were already excited, but then to hear Her Excellency's speech just before lunch really makes this feel even more important, impactful, poignant, and a particularly kind of pivotal moment for Dubai and perhaps for well-being in schools around the world. Jennifer and I come from Geelong Grammar School, which is the school that has the longest running positive education program in the world. It's the largest positive education program in the world. It's 10 years old now. We had Professor Martin Seligman from University of Pennsylvania live at our school for 6 months about 10 years ago to help us kick off what has become now known as positive education. So our school is a beautiful big old boarding school in Geelong, and we also have an institute team, a research training and development institute that is attached to the school, that lives within the school. There are 6 full-time members of our team doing research, training and development in wellbeing and positive education. So we are very proud of what our team's been able to achieve. But I guess the first thing I wanted to say to you is part of that 10-year journey of pioneering this field is we've also made the most mistakes out of any school in the world in positive education. And we continue to make mistakes. And that's part of being a pioneer in any field. And so today is about sharing with you some of what we've learned along our journey. We will present some of the leading research that's occurring in the field at the moment, some of the cutting edge science. We'll also tell you some stories about Geelong Grammar, some of the stuff that has worked and some of the mistakes we made along the way. But it is an absolute privilege to be spending half an hour, 45 minutes with you today, just sharing a little bit about what we've learned about the science of positive education. Can I just begin with a raise of hands in the room? Who is a classroom practitioner, in classrooms, spends some time in the week at the chalk face with students in front of them? Excellent, thank you. That includes me and Jen as well. And this presentation is for you guys as much as it is for school leaders. Because although Her Excellency's speech is passionate and full of integrity, and so is music to our ears to have a government supporting from the top down this initiative, the reality is that at the end of the day, wellbeing occurs when a teacher is in front of students and has that wonderful, magical interaction of a child and a teacher, or children and children together. But we want to make sure that whilst we acknowledge and respect hugely what the Dubai government is doing, what KHDA is doing, we also hugely admire and respect what classroom practitioners are doing in front of children. And so with that, let us begin. And I'd like to begin here, which is how we begin every single meeting we have at Geelong Grammar in positive education. All of our meetings begin with a what went well. What went well. What went well is one of the many tools that we use at Geelong Grammar and schools around the world. It has been researched actually fairly heavily, and this does have a big impact on any meeting. It's kind of a positive primer for a meeting. The way this works is I'm going to invite you in a moment to turn to somebody near you, someone next to you, and to share something that's gone well for you in the last 24 hours. It might be a big one or a little one. For me this morning, the chicken sausages at about 4 a.m. this morning on the Qantas flight were definitely a highlight. They looked terrible, they tasted delicious. So for me, just enjoying that chicken sausage at 4 a.m. on a Qantas flight was a real little highlight for me. And so that's my little what went well for today. But I'd like you to turn to somebody near you and for 1 minute, just share something good that's happened in your life. It might be huge, you might have won the lottery, or it might be tiny that you've met someone lovely. But please feel free just for 1 minute to turn to somebody next to you, share a little what went well that's happened to you in the last 24 hours. I'll leave over to you for 1 minute. All right, let me interrupt you there. Thank you. I'd love to just hear one from a brave, courageous person. I know there's one or two Aussies in the audience as well. But someone, thank you. Would you mind if I come? Oh, is there a microphone? If I come down, yeah. Whoop. That's right. Yeah. Thank you. Would you like to share? Did you have one you'd like to share? Yeah, please.
The Minister for Happiness liked my tweet.
The Minister for Happiness liked your. What was your tweet?
You should brush your brain clean of negativity as often as your teeth.
Should brush your brain clean of negativity as often as your teeth. I love that. Thank you. What was your name? Julia. Thank you, Julia. From Australia. Go Cats. Geelong is our local football team. But this is like a hawthorn kind of colours, isn't it? Yellow and brown. Some for the Aussies. Who is this? Who is this? Does it have a name? Angry Bird. I love the Angry Birds. The red one's my favourite. Can I put him down there? Excellent. So what went well? I guess at this point, can I just say that the point of doing that little exercise, partly to get you to have a chat to the person next to you, to create a slightly interactive presentation, but actually because positive education isn't just about policies and procedures and documents and curriculum. It's about foremost and primarily living well-being. Part of that is modelling well-being, and that's why all of our meetings begin with a what went well. All of our courses and conferences we run begin with a what went well. Because yes, we like to talk about the science of well-being, but we also like to do the science of well-being, and that's part of what went well is part of the way we do well-being at Geelong Grammar School. The other thing I'd like to do before we really commence and talk to you a little bit about the science of achievement is a quiz, because we're all educators. Some of us are classroom teachers, and we love setting tests in a class, don't we? We all love setting tests. It's not so nice to be on the other side of a test, is it? So let me give you an experience of what some of your students might feel like. There are 4 questions, and we do have a prize actually, some Australian chocolates for some prize winners perhaps. Here's the first question. What percentage of students travel from abroad to study in Dubai? What percentage of students travel from abroad to study in Dubai? Is it A, 15, B, 22, C, 33, or D, 44%? D, 44%. Everyone got an answer? Good. Who's gone with A? Okay, who's gone with B? Okay, who's gone with C? Good. And D, 44. The answer is C, 33% of students were very good. So we've got one person. Give yourself a point. Excellent. Good, good, good. Here's the second question. Okay, your inside knowledge. What percentage of Dubai parents say their children enjoy school? Is it A, 91%, 81%, 71%, or 61%? What percentage of Dubai parents say their children enjoy school? Who's gone with A, 91? Okay. B, everyone's looking at the KHDA people now. Who's gone with B, 81? Okay. C, 71, and D, 61. Okay, interesting. The answer, according to KHDA, actually is 91%. So it's an incredible statistic, really, isn't it? Incredible. And part of the education, Australia is a multicultural country, but nothing compared to what you guys have here. It's an incredible education system you have, and we're learning more and more about it. The more we learn about it, the more we love it. Here's the third question. Approximately how many students are currently studying in Dubai? 185,000, 265, 200,000, or 345,000? Who's going with A? Hands up. Okay. B? Okay, good. C? 200,000. Okay. And D? 345. Interesting. Answer 265,000. 265,000. I think that little red that has slipped down when the text has changed. But actually, it should be 265,000. So we're going to go with answer is B. So who's on 3 out of 3 so far? Who's got 3 out of 3? Okay, excellent. Some caramello koalas. There's one more question. There's one more question coming in. It's here. It's the trickiest one of all. How far is it from the Emirates Aviation University to Geelong Grammar School? Now, this is as the crow flies in a direct line. No cheating, no Googling, please. Is it 7,611 kilometres, 9,611, 11,611, or D, too far? Who's going with A? 7,600? Okay. 9,600, B? Okay. C, 11,600? Okay, good. And D, too far? Good, and the answer is D. Thank you. No, the answer is D, but the answer is actually 11,611 kilometres. Congratulations. Did anyone have 4? Anyone get 4 out of 4? Nobody? Oh, Jen and I have to eat the chocolates tonight ourselves. But no, we'll give them, we'll put some out at the end if you'd like to come and collect my favourite chocolates. A caramello koala. It does have a belly full of caramel. And usually in Australia we suggest that visitors don't eat koalas. Kangaroos quite tasty. Please don't eat koalas unless they're chocolate ones, which taste delicious. This is a question perhaps we get asked the most around the world as we travel. So David, what actually is positive education? And I could give a week-long lecture about the science of positive psychology and how it applies to education. But in essence, that's what positive education is. It's placing well-being at the heart of education. It's not just putting well-being into your curriculum. It's not just saying academics and well-being are important. Positive education is when the school says, do you know what, well-being is the most important thing. Yes, maths and English and geography is important. Yes, learning language is important. But you know, the most important thing is well-being. And let's value that first, because parents around the world value it. Teachers around the world value well-being first. So why don't schools put well-being first? And schools that are putting well-being at the heart of education around the world, we're seeing some incredible results. Geelong Grammar is at the end of $1 million 3-year longitudinal study conducted by the University of Melbourne. It's having some incredible findings about what happens when you put well-being at the heart of education. Yes, there are some academic benefits, but that's not why we do positive education. That's a nice little side effect. The reason we do positive education is because well-being matters for its own sake. Putting well-being at the heart of education. We do have the opportunity, Jen and I, to travel around Australia, to travel around the world, train over 10,000 educators around the world now, work with over 500 schools. What we will never do is tell you how to do positive education. Because in our experience at Geelong Grammar, it's one way to do it. At Mark Oliphant College in South Australia, it's one of the poorest postcodes in Australia. They do it very differently, and we've supported them. There is no one way to do positive education. But if you don't follow that mantra, learn it, live it, teach it, embed it, positive education will fail. In schools around the world where we're seeing wellbeing and positive education flourish, they give their staff an opportunity to learn positive education first, to learn the science. At Geelong Grammar, we spent 2 years training our teachers before students even heard the phrase positive education. The staff own this. They learn it first. And then the staff must live it. The school has to live PosEd. And you'll excuse me for calling it PosEd. It's our kind of street lingo, our street language we use with our students when we talk about positive education. PosEd. You have to live PosEd. It was only about a month ago I was in a school where I saw a disaster occur. A middle-aged male teacher teaching about gratitude, a lesson on gratitude, and he had to be the grumpiest, most ungrateful human I'd ever come across. And he's teaching about the science of gratitude and telling kids off and being completely ungrateful for their contributions. It's a disaster. Positive education will fail if you don't learn it and then live it first. And then you can worry about trying to teach it if you like to your students. And then embedding it's the hard piece. This is where you change your whole school policies. Geelong Grammar no longer has a discipline policy. We used to, we don't have one anymore. It's a kindness and forgiveness policy now. All of our policies, the way we interview staff, the way teachers write reports, the way work is set, is fully through the lens of positive education. Learn it, live it, teach it, embed it. The last thing I want to say about this is, PosEd is not a curriculum. If you've got a principal in your school, a leader in your school saying, go out and get a curriculum and bring it back, that will fail. I know it because we've seen it too many times. POSED is not a curriculum. It's a philosophy. It's a shift in thinking. It's putting well-being at the heart of education. It's not a curriculum. Yes, the curriculum possibly is part of it, but that's down the track. Firstly, shift your school's philosophy, put well-being at the heart of education, and then maybe worry about teaching it to students. But please don't fall into the trap of thinking that positive education is just a curriculum you can plonk into your school. We're not going to talk much more at all, actually, about Geelong Grammar School today. It's not really what we're here to do. But I did want to show you this is our applied model for positive education. It comes out of 10 years of thinking, 10 years of scientific rigour, 10 years of trying and failing. This is the model for positive education that encompasses the 6 domains of well-being: positive relationships, emotions, health, engagement, accomplishment, and purpose. We learn it, live it, teach it around the outside and flourishing in the middle. Her Excellency talks about happiness and positivity. We just call that flourishing. We don't want to talk too much about this because today we're going to zoom in right here, accomplishment. We're going to zoom into the section on accomplishment. Accomplishment is a significant and important part of student well-being. Yes, positive emotions are really important. Yes, relationships are critically important. Yes, health is important. Engagement in the class, all of that is important. Equally, so is accomplishment. The sense of accomplishment, the sense of achieving is pivotal to a student's well-being. And so today, for the next 20 minutes or so, we'd like to share with you some of the cutting edge, the leading science, the leading thinking in the world around how accomplishment affects well-being, but more importantly, how you can influence a child's achievement and accomplishment, how you can understand what causes achievement and accomplishment, and ultimately what you can do in your classrooms to help foster achievement in your students. It's your turn to have a bit of a think and a bit of a talk. Again, I'm going to invite you to share with people next to you. I want you to have a think about this question for 1 minute. When we think about achievement, accomplishment, could all of your students eventually score high enough to gain entry into Harvard Law School if they wanted to? Could all of your students? Let me give you 1 minute with the people around you to discuss that. I'd love you to have a think about that, and we'll come back with some answers in just 1 minute. Quick chat about that question. Please feel free and honest. Let me stop you, let me interrupt you. Some lovely little chatter going on. It's a tricky question. Just to get a quick snapshot, who kind of went with yes? I think pretty much, maybe all of my students, if they wanted to, any of them really, could get into Harvard Law School if they chose to. Excellent, interesting, hands down, thank you. Who said no? Who said no? There's just like some kids, unfortunately, we just never get there. Okay, well, there's people with their hands up. Hold, no, please keep your hands up. If we say we assume they have a healthy mind, a healthy brain, would you still say no? Assuming they're healthy brain kids? Okay, still a few people saying no, there are just some kids that can't get there. It's an interesting question because this is getting at the heart of achievement, the science of achievement. What causes achievement? What is it? I'd love to have a chat with these people that said no and with the people that said yes. Unfortunately, in today's session, we can't, but I'd love to pick your brains a bit about why you think that is. Why is that? And this is the science of achievement. What causes achievement? Is it kind of biological? Is there this thing called talent? Is there some innate, inborn kind of part of us that either says at birth we have the capacity to do that or not? Is there some of that talent? Or is talent kind of a myth? Is it all learned? It's a fascinating question that psychology and education have been arguing about for decades now. This thing called talent, giftedness. Is it a real thing? How impactful is it? Interestingly, in the last 3 or 4 years, there's been a fascinating story emerging from the science that is starting to tell us a little bit about this answer. The answer is that there is a thing called talent, and there are students with a gift. But that gift isn't quite what you might have thought it is. In fact, this gift that some students have, the elite students, the highest performing students that you have, they have a gift. But it's not the gift you might be thinking. There's a powerful, interesting story emerging from the science that we'd like to tell you a little bit about. And so I'd like to hand over to Jen to tell you a little bit about that story.
Lovely. Thank you, David. And I'd like to extend my warm welcome to you too. As you might notice, I do have an American accent. So it's lovely to be in a multicultural place, a place where I'm hearing a lot of American accents as well, so I'm not getting picked on quite as much by my colleague David for having a different accent from his. So as David touched on, we're going to be exploring a few concepts in the area of positive psychology. We're going to be talking about the growth mindset, grit, and hope. And all three of these concepts are concepts that have quite a bit of evidence base that's coming out of the field, backing them up. So it isn't just nice sounding words. These are concepts that have evidence behind them. They're important for achievement. And so we'll start with growth mindset. So first I'd like to get a show of hands. Maybe starting down here would be, this is the first time you've ever heard of growth mindset. To here maybe today is, you've heard a little bit in some of the other workshops about growth mindset, or all the way up here would be that you are very familiar with Carol Dweck's work and maybe have read a couple of her books or some of her research. So can I get a show of how familiar people are with the concept of growth mindset? Okay, so a good amount of people with some knowledge. That's great. It's great to see. So I'll just be adding to that knowledge, supporting what you already know about this concept. So Carol Dweck comes from the university in the US called Stanford University, and for the past 20 plus years she's been researching this concept of mindset. So what is it that causes achievement? What is it that causes ability, our characteristics, our personality, our intellect? And she can boil it down to basically two mindsets, a fixed mindset and a growth mindset. So somebody with a fixed mindset has this belief that their skills and abilities stem from innate biological factors, that they're set in stone, that we can't change them, that we're sort of born with these skills and there isn't really much that we can do about it. And having this belief means that when we're faced with challenges, when we're faced with setbacks, we think there isn't a whole lot that we can do about it. And what it also means is that we don't see the point in engaging in deliberate practice, that we can't grow, that we can't get better at whatever it is that we're set out to try to do. And a growth mindset is the belief that skills and abilities are the result of effort, that with hard work, perseverance, we can get better at something, that when we fail, we don't even really see it as failure, we see it as learning. And so a fixed mindset means we consider our abilities to be predetermined, like there's a predetermined path. Whereas a growth mindset means we're viewing our abilities as something that's unknown and unknowable. And so thinking about this in our classrooms, because that's what we're here to learn about and talk about today, is these concepts within our classrooms. This talk of potential. Potential is a harmful word to use in our classrooms. No matter how well-intentioned we are when we refer to, let's say, Muhammad not living up to his potential in math. Because we want him to work harder, we want him to strive to be his best, but when we use that word potential, I'll just use this as an analogy. What is the potential capacity of this water bottle? Well, we know exactly what its capacity is. It's 330 milliliters. It can't hold any more than that. There are predetermined factors that dictate how much this water bottle can hold. That's its potential. But humans aren't like a water bottle. Their capacity is unknowable. And so we don't really know what its potential is. And so to refer to ability in terms of potential can be quite constraining, can be quite harmful. And also when we praise our students, not all praise is the same. So I think of a student approaching their teacher. Let's call her Miriam. Miriam approaches you as a teacher with a piece of art that she's just completed and is seeking feedback from you on how she did on this piece of art. Now, we need to remember that at this young age, kids are forming their theory. They're forming their belief about where their ability comes from. And so we have one of two choices in that moment, in our reaction, in our praise of Miriam's work. The first being that we could highlight this sort of innate ability that she has to produce a beautiful piece of art. Wow, you're such a good artist. Look at your talent, look at your skill. Or we can approach it from a growth mindset language, where we ask Miriam about the colors that she used, how she spent such effort, working on this curve of this dog and getting her to talk about that process. So this is called person praise versus process praise. And when we use person praise, when we're complimenting somebody on being a good artist, research shows that it makes it more likely that they attach this value that you've assigned to their work to them as a person, to their identity. And now they're going to do everything they can to prove that they can meet that standard that you've set. And so they're actually less likely to engage in challenges, to kind of stretch, to push the boundaries, to test out their limits because they don't want to fail in your eyes. And so process praise is that practice of exploring with the student what it is that they did, rather than who they are, what it is that they did in order to achieve that goal. So talking to Miriam about how she produced that piece of work. And so now I'd like you to have a chat with the person next to you about this scenario. So a year 4 student hands in a beautifully presented poster on the planet Neptune. The information is accurate and relevant, the spelling's perfect, and a reference list is included in the bottom corner. What would you say to this student? I'll give you a minute to chat to the person next to you. How could you approach this student with language that highlights a growth mindset and will encourage her development of a growth mindset? Go ahead. Okay, so I heard some lovely discussions in the audience of how to use this process praise, of getting, I guess, really it's about engaging that young person in a conversation. I think it's about getting them to reflect on what their journey was like in that learning process. And in this case, this young person would be most likely receiving a good grade for their work. And so it's not just about saying, oh, good job, pat on the back. I think of a discussion that I had with a friend who grades university papers. And she noticed that she spent so much time giving detailed feedback on the work of students who weren't doing so well on their essay. But with an essay that was really well written, all she did at the top was write, well done. And you see how that isn't very helpful for that learner to understand, well, what was it that I did that was well done? What was it that I can do next time? Like if they're not perhaps engaging in that self-reflection of how they got that good mark, then they might not know how to replicate that next time. So it's important to kind of break that down with them and understand with them how they achieved that result. And this is the next scenario. So a literacy report for a Year 2 student who is producing work that is below the expected level. What would you write to that student, write in that student's report that uses growth mindset language and can foster a growth mindset in that student? Again, chatting with the person next to you for 1 or 2 minutes. All right, well, I'd like to show you an example of how Geelong Grammar School approaches the growth mindset, how we try to foster a growth mindset in our students through the activities that we do, through the language that we use, and this is a great example of how we foster that in our students. Here we go.
Grow Your Mind Day is all about children achieving what they didn't necessarily think was possible. It's about them giving things a go and deciding that they can do it. Often tasks that seem really difficult or a challenge, children will automatically want to give up. So it's about saying to them, no, let's not give up, let's give it a go. And through that giving it a go, they can see that they can achieve it. It's going from a can't attitude to a can attitude through a preparedness to give things a go and determination.
Grow Your Mind Day is a day I think about getting new opportunities to reach your mind to new goals.
Well, being open-minded is like thinking outside the square and doing things before you lash out.
Because Grow Your Mind Day is special, you get to play a lot with your friends and do some things new. Like if you are scared of something, give it a go. But if you can't do it, just keep trying and you might get it.
Positive education isn't about being happy all the time, but it's about trying to develop good positive emotions at the right time, and sometimes negative emotions when you need to feel sad. Isn't that cool when you learn to do stuff? And this is what PosEd's about too. Learning how cool it is when you can accomplish things. When you learn how to do stuff, that's pretty cool. That's called accomplishment.
So we've got 4 activities today, plus a public speaker coming to tell us about the way that he's managed challenges in his life. He's a past GGS student, Cameron. The whole point of us getting him was so that children can understand that they indeed will face challenges along the way and that they will be able to get through them.
I had an x-ray and they found out that I had a little growth on the bone in my leg. Now you can see that I've got my leg there at the moment, but I'm actually missing my leg. All I could do was ski to the best of my ability, and they will ski to the best of their ability, and hopefully if I ski well, yes, if I get a medal, great. If I ski well and I came fourth, well, as long as I did the best that I could, then I was still happy with those results. To me, I would rather my friend treat me as an equal. So that's how I suppose, saw my friends, that they didn't treat me any differently. They didn't see me as a boy with one leg. They knew I had one leg, but they didn't see me as differently to them.
Your Mind Day is a day when you just come to school and just do new activities like rock climbing. I've never gone rock climbing before, so I'm not sure if it will be good or not. It's when you just give things a go.
On Grow Your Mind Day, we had lots of fun stuff to do, and we had this really good art class with Mrs. Haig, I think it was, and we made like these clay little birds. Right now we're having our wraps, and I tried tomato and it was really nice because I've never had it in a wrap before, and it tastes really nice.
I think that anything to do with the mind and the wellness and being a better person is really important for children. I think that it's really important for them to understand that they are in control of their body, they're in control of their mind, and that more important than anything, that they can make changes. So I think that that can only help with the relationships around them. They can build on that, and they can see that by working with others and giving things a go, it's going to help them and their friends.
So that's one of the ways that we deliberately allow students to explore growth mindset. So when we talk about the science of achievement, the highest achieving students in the world are starting with a growth mindset. That's where they start. A belief, a theory that ability comes through hard work and practice, not through genetics. That's the key starting point for achievement. It's the first key that unlocks achievement. What we've found is, as Carol Dweck shows in her research, that it's teachable. A growth mindset is just a theory, it's just a thought. Therefore, of course, it's changeable. And what we've shown through our research at our school is that our Year 7 students, when they do year POS Ed in Year 7, 72% of them have a growth mindset, and by the time they get to Year 11, 12, 85% of them have a growth mindset, a belief, a theory that ability comes through practice and hard work. But it's not the complete answer to achievement. It's the starting point, because if you have a belief, do you know what? I have a belief, actually, I was pretty good at soccer. I have a belief that I could have been a professional soccer player, a professional football player. I have that belief, but I never did because I didn't practice enough, right? So a belief about something isn't enough. It's the starting point. And so the next key that unlocks achievement is grit. This comes from Angela Duckworth's work, brilliant, my favourite positive psychologist at the moment, brilliant psychologist working out of the University of Pennsylvania. And her real extended piece of research she's doing at the moment is on grit. And grit, as many of you know, is passion and perseverance for very long-term goals. You only get grit, by the way, if you have a growth mindset. Otherwise, you would never practice in the first place. So you've got to have a growth mindset at start, and then you've got to have this persistent practicing mindset about wanting to persist despite challenges and struggles over a long period of time. That helps cause achievement. And there's probably no one else in the world I can think of to better explain grit than Will Smith, who I do have a bit of a crush on, a man crush. I like Will Smith. I think he's an amazing man, and I kind of want to be Will. So let me allow Will to explain his explanation of grit.
The only thing that I can see, and you can never really look at yourself, the only thing that I see that is distinctly different about me is I'm not afraid to die on a treadmill, right? I will run.
You would not be outworked.
I will not be outworked,
Right.
period.
Yeah.
You know, you might have more talent than me, you might be smarter than me, you might be sexier than me, you might be all of those things. You got it on me in 9 categories. But if we get on the treadmill together, right, there's 2 things. You're getting off first, or I'm going to die. It's really that simple.
And it's a fairly extreme version of grit, but that's what grit is. It's about that persistence, that long-term passion and perseverance for long-term goals. The brilliance of Angela Duckworth really is encapsulated, and please read her book called Grit, came out this year, brilliant for educators. Anyone in education field around the world should read her book. But the brilliance of her is the simplicity, I think, with which she's encapsulated this concept of talent and effort. What she says is that there's this thing called talent, and talent's a real thing. You know, there is a field of research that says actually talent's fake, it doesn't exist, there's no such thing. Duckworth says that's not true, there is talent. Talent is the rate at which we improve with practice, and that's biological. That's biological. There is this thing called talent, it's biological, it's inbuilt in us, it's the rate at which we improve with practice. Talent times effort gives you a skill. So you're born with this biological talent, you put in effort and you end up with a skill. Unfortunately, in humans, that doesn't equal achievement though. Because if you have a skill and you just sit on the sofa watching The Simpsons, you never achieve anything. And so what you have to do with that skill is put in effort again. You take that skill, you multiply it by effort, and then you get achievement. The interesting thing for the mathematicians in the room, looking at this simultaneous equation, is that yes, talent counts, but effort counts twice. And this is the gift that the highest achieving students know and possess. They understand that you need a growth mindset and then you need grit, which is largely effort and hard work. That's the gift that they have. And interestingly, all students have this gift. All students have the ability to work hard. It's just about us trying to instill that in them. So we have mindset and we have grit. But just putting in effort, actually, thanks to Anders Ericsson, who's the leading researcher in understanding experts. He's the expert on experts. Anders Ericsson has said effort's not enough. You've got to have a particular type of effort called deliberate practice, which is very skillful, incrementally focusing on how to improve your skill, usually with a mentor or a teacher assisting you. And this is why sometimes in your classroom, just keeping on practice, kids don't get any better because they're practicing poorly. So having a growth mindset and having grit isn't enough. You've got to have a growth mindset and grit and deliberate practice. So in your classroom, role modeling passion, fostering autonomy and meaning, encouraging deliberate practice, this is how you build grit. Unfortunately, grit isn't enough either. Grit is not enough. A growth mindset is a great start, grit's second, but if you come up against an obstacle, obstacles are the enemy of grit. And they kill grit. And we've all been there. All of us have been at that point where we've come up an obstacle and we've just given up eventually. So obstacles kill grit unless you have hope. And Rick Snyder's hope theory is this brilliant part of positive psychology, huge amount of research emerging in the field of hope. What hope is the ability to generate multiple pathways. The highest achieving students in Geelong Grammar, in Australia, in Dubai, around the world, are those that have a growth mindset, have oodles of grit, and who have high levels of hope. Hope is the ability to generate multiple pathways to achieving your goal. That's what hope is. When you have multiple pathways, you have greater agency. When you have greater agency, you have greater pathways. And so hope is generated. When we see multiple pathways, we feel energized to overcome obstacles. And so the highest achieving students in the world have a growth mindset. They have grit, passion, and perseverance. And then they have high levels of hope that even if I come up against an obstacle, I'll find a way around it. So in your classroom, how do you foster hope? Well, you role model it. That's where you start. You say as a teacher, I'm learning to play the guitar and I keep coming up against obstacles and I can't get my finger across that F chord. And so you'll role model hope and you come up with ways to overcome those obstacles. You help students find pathways. All of us in this room have heard the phrase from a student, I can't do it. Carol Dweck tells us, Rick Snyder tells us that students should be saying, I can't do it yet. Let's help students find the pathways to overcome those challenges. And embracing failure. At Geelong Grammar, we've started using the word celebrating failure. That actually, as Tal Ben-Shahar, who's my second favourite positive psychologist in the world, says that you need to learn to fail or you fail to learn. That failure is actually the source code of learning. It's the programming of learning failure. That's how we learn, not only embracing, celebrating failure. And so we have these three key parts of the emerging field of positive psychology: growth mindset, grit, hope, that tells the story of what causes achievement in our students. It's a compelling story, it's incomplete, because we don't have all the signs yet, but it's a pretty powerful message for teachers to hear. The cool thing about this is that teachers can change what they're doing in their classroom to affect all of this. You know, you can't change genetics, but you can change all of this. And we're seeing huge impact when teachers are able to do that. Just wanted to reference our book. Some of you will have seen our book. It's available on our website. It's also on Amazon. This explores the whole Geelong Grammar positive education journey. If you're interested, have a look at our website or come and speak to me afterwards. An extended kind of story about our whole journey, including sections from the leading positive psychologists around the world. So we've run out of things to talk to you about today. So can I thank you very much for your participation, for your listening, for sharing those little stories and what went well, and for engaging in what's happening in the amazing story of wellbeing in Dubai. So thank you very much. Sure. We're happy to take one or two questions. I understand some people may need to leave to go to other appointments, so please don't feel rude doing that, but we'd love to take some questions if you had some questions at all about anything to do with wellbeing, positive education, Geelong Grammar.
Hello.
Hi.
Are you hearing me?
Yes.
Tell me a little bit about how you see rewards fitting into this. I'm also interested to look at some research coming out of the US about linking education to business and where rewarding, particularly tangible rewards, are seen to not work at all to develop this entire philosophy. So where do you see it fitting into your experience?
What's your name, sorry?
Sorry, I'm Giles Pruitt. I'm head of school at Gems World Academy in Dubai.
Thank you. Giles. Yeah. It's a fascinating question. In a couple of weeks' time, Elfie Cohn, who's a leading researcher and writer in the field out of the east coast of the States, is coming to Geelong Grammar to answer that question in a much more eloquent way than I could, Giles. But the short answer is that we're trying to move away from extrinsic motivation. The research is unequivocal in this field that using any form of extrinsic motivation, extrinsic motivation does get compliance. And so if I wanted 100 questions now, all I would have to say is, I'll give you $1,000 for anyone who asks a question, and I'm able to control your behaviour. And that's what extrinsic motivation, external rewards do. They allow you to control a human's behaviour. But the problem with that is that it kills intrinsic motivation. So, for example, I've got a little 18-month-old son, little Hudson. He's gorgeous, and he's just started going and giving hugs to other kids. What Elfie Cohn said to me in person the other day is, David, when Hudson does that, if you go over to Hudson and say, good boy, and pat him on the back, good boy, you gave that girl a cuddle, what I've just done there is just make Hudson less kind, less loving than he was 5 minutes ago, because I've imposed an extrinsic, external value judgment on what he's doing. And yes, next time he might look to see if I'm there and give the girl a cuddle so that he gets a reward from me, but actually that his intrinsic, his innate heart-driven desire to cuddle that girl with no extrinsic motivation in the first place is decreased. So extrinsic motivation kills intrinsic motivation ultimately. Some amazing research showing that Dan Pink's TED Talk is awesome on this, showing that extrinsic rewards kill creativity. It's a disaster for creativity. It's a disaster for long-term motivation. It's a disaster for building communities. So in many ways, we're trying to look at ways at Geelong Grammar to remove or at least limit the use of extrinsic motivation and punishment for that matter as well. We're trying to look at other ways to drive motivation without carrots and sticks.
So is there a way in which you quantify achievement for your students? How do they recognise achievements as being
it's a great question.
achieved?
It's a great question. And, Eliza Chomley's our female school captain. She stood up her final speech at the end of this year and she answered that question. She said, we have this speech day. Geelong Grammar is this old historic school where you have a speech day and the kid who scores the highest in maths gets to shake the principal's hand, gets a book, and that's achievement, sure. But Eliza says, what about the girl who came second in the shot put at Aths Day? Who's been trying to come second, and she wanted to throw 3 metres with the shot put, and she did. Surely that's achievement. And Eliza's kind of eloquent 18-year-old, slightly naive, but beautifully kind of the essence of achievement. She just said, if you think it's achievement and you've put in effort to get there, then that is achievement. The achievement is driven by it's an internal, subjective experience. That you set your mind on doing something, you work hard and you get there, that's it. if it's coming second in the shot put, or it's getting a C instead of a D in English, or if it's getting the A+, or getting to Harvard, whatever it is. Achievement is what you set your mind to and then what you work towards and get there. That is achievement. So it's completely subjective. Any other questions? Yes, maybe Danny, there's a microphone, I think. Thank you for your question, Giles, appreciate it.
Hi, I can see that so much of what you do is just what you live through every day, so the way you speak, the way you act, the way the children speak and act. But do you actually also teach explicit lessons on how to achieve positive education as well with your children, or is it a mixture of both?
Yeah. Let me answer that. Maybe Jen, you can talk about some of the lessons you've been teaching. So we do have an explicit program. It goes from year 5 to 10, so from 10-year-olds through to 16-year-olds, and it's a timetabled subject. So students learn English, Maths, History, Geography and POS Ed. It's just a normal timetabled subject that students from years 5 to year 10 go through. We'd like to have year 11 and 12 students, but because the timetable's so packed, I'm not winning that fight yet with our curriculum people, but we would love to do that. And yeah, that's a critical part of what we do. Where what you just experienced is pretty much plagiarised from what we teach our year 10 students. It's pretty much exactly the same stuff that we're teaching, and so we do have explicit teaching by trained teachers who are delivering positive education curriculum. And Jen is one of those current teachers who's teaching year 10 POS Ed, so maybe a very quick summary of what a typical lesson might be like, Jen?
Yeah, no worries. Is this on? Yes, so as David mentioned, we have these set lessons. So for instance, some of the topics that we cover with students, the past couple of terms, we looked at empathy, so understanding what empathy is, engaging in group discussions as a class about what empathy looks like, and I love too the debates that come around it with, with altruism and whether there's a such thing as kindness without any desire for reward. So we'll touch on those kinds of topics. We also have been looking over the past couple of weeks at the importance of sleep and delving into the science around the importance of sleep for our brains, for our bodies, for them to be able to approach their lessons and exams with a fresh mind, and the importance of social relationships. So a lot of it is classroom-based discussions. We show them the latest science and usually try to use engaging TED Talks or other kinds of videos that a lot of experts are kind of moving towards creating now, so that it is more approachable information for people in the public, for young people. And so those are the kinds of lessons that we deliver.
Thank you very much.
Is there a question on the back? Yeah. Yes.
And you've made all the mistakes.
Yeah.
And all the stuff. Thank you for that. But in our context of, we can get all that information now. It's become visible.
Yes.
How long do you think it would take for a school to start from scratch and implement it and see? I know it's a lifelong thing, but actually physically, and I think that sort of goes off the question before about time span or whatever, and more results. But if we took out, say for instance, our school started from scratch, would it take us 10 years to see these results?
It's a really good question. It's taken us 10 years and we're nowhere near finished. As you said, we continue to make mistakes. In 2014, for example, we got some feedback back from University of Melbourne that said students want more experiential lessons, less kind of book and less talk. They wanted to experience it more. So I spent the summer rejuvenating, rewriting our whole Year 10 curriculum, and it was fully experiential. So there was no kind of discussion. It was all kids learning about neuroplasticity via a juggling project and a purpose project whereby they wrote picture storybooks for another local state primary school, government school, and it was all experiential. And it was great for the kids, except it's exhausting and nearly killed the teachers because every time they were having to learn how to juggle to teach the kids to juggle. So it was actually a disaster. It went okay and the kids learned a lot and it was fun, but it wasn't sustainable. So that's one of the many mistakes we made. We also didn't take baseline data at the start, which, Geelong Grammar, we've been going for 10 years. I wish we had the baseline data. We didn't take baseline measurement at the start, which is an error. And so, we don't have that data from 10 years ago. But So the answer is, you know, we've had to pioneer, and whenever you're pioneering in the field, it takes longer and you make way more mistakes. So now every school that's starting POSED, with our support, takes baseline data. They don't make that mistake because we made it, and they don't have to make that mistake. And so that type of experience enables us to shortcut the implementation. However, I think the best answer to your question is, you know, at Geelong Grammar, it's cost, you know, POSED's cost millions of Australian dollars over the 10 years. But perhaps the best example of positive education that I've seen around the world is at Mark Oliphant College in South Australia in Northern Adelaide. It's a Category 1 school, which means it's the lowest socioeconomic school in Australia. And their positive education program has cost $50. 50 Australian dollars. They put up a gratitude tree in the reception of their school, and parents started coming in and writing nice things about their students as they dropped the kids off. Retention rates at that school over the last 3 years, completion rates, sorry, of their Year 12, have gone from about 60, 50 or 60% now up to just under 100%. It's transformed their school and cost virtually nothing in 3 years. Remembering that, I just need to emphasise this one more time, that positive education fundamentally is a philosophy, it's a shift in thinking. It's a school like yours saying, we're going to put wellbeing at the heart of education, and that costs nothing and takes no time. You know, so once you've made that decision, positive education starts then. And it can take, you know, I imagine for many schools we work with, it takes 2 or 3 years kind of to start seeing benefits, because you must train teachers first. Teachers have to own this, be trained in it. That takes time. But you can do little things like putting up a gratitude tree in your reception that takes no time, costs no money, and it starts to have a really big trickle down sort of impact on the school. So we've seen whole school change take as little time as 2 years, 2 or 3 years to have radical shift in a school's outputs and outcomes. But some other schools are taking longer time to do it. And so it depends on the scale, but fundamentally it's shifting the psychology, the thinking, the philosophy of your schools, but wellbeing at the heart of education.
Thank you very